Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here on the virtual. I think it's the first Analytics for a Better World virtual webinar for this season, if I'm not wrong. So it's an honor to be the presenter here for this. I have a talk today on what's called swap and route. This is in collaboration with a number of collaborators, as you can see on the screen. We are at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in central Massachusetts in the US, as well as Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. So title of my talk today is Swap and Route, Fast Resource Exchange and Collaborative Routing for Nonprofits. So let's begin. So peer-to-peer sharing, strengthening communities. So peer-to-peer, you're probably familiar with peer-to-peer sharing. This is really helping at a kind of a more horizontal grassroots level, empowering individuals by, as simple as lending books and connecting people in this way. It builds bonds, it increases communities, resilience in communities. And if you think about, just a couple examples here, food pantries. One might have some surplus food, the other doesn't. And if the awareness is there, great, they could possibly help one another, but oftentimes the awareness isn't there. After disasters, another important context, especially for our audience, local nonprofits could struggle to quickly match the needs with supplies that are available, but maybe across, the way or not, that folks aren't aware that these resources are available. So just suffice it to say, peer-to-peer, P2P exchange can free up this capacity, and it strengthens the collective response for community-focused organizations. And the cost of poor coordination, we can imagine, right? There can be food waste on one hand, or even in a disaster setting, delays in responses that could lead to serious results. So on the left-hand side, we just have a picture of, food sharing, right? Like thinking about how do restaurants at the end of the day have food resources that they could share with others, maybe donate to, a homeless shelter or a drop-in center. And that awareness is important. So if we think about making that awareness, that information known, then we might be able to distribute this food. Now, similarly, over on the right, there was in the US, there was a bridge collapse. Folks might remember this. A large ship ran into a bridge, and it really highlighted or underscored the need for collaboration between nonprofits. There was nonprofits that wanted to help, but they didn't know where to help. And, in an emergency setting, there can only be so many hours that pass, days or hours that pass before it's too late. Okay. So the challenge is that, for these small and mid-sized organizations, they don't really have a lot of access to coordination platforms, and they rarely know resources that one another have. So potential matching, can be limited or non-existent. And the current realities are that, where there are those that are intervening, those systems are more vertical and they're built for larger scale operations and flowing top down. And peer-to-peer, there isn't really much coordination there or existing structure there. It's more ad hoc if there is such sharing. So, folks would prefer to share these resources in times of need, but they need a mechanism to connect horizontally in these times of need. So this is the work that we're doing. Communities building a mechanism for communities to enable horizontal connection, direct exchange of resources, as well as coordination of delivery plans. Now, I should note that this is ongoing work. So it is not completed, but we are well along the way. And I'm going to point out I've mentioned, exchange here as well as delivery. The exchange part has been published. The delivery part is the one that's in progress. The exchange part has also been deployed. I'll walk through that in a bit. I even have a video for you all. Hopefully that works you're able to see it. But let me talk about the exchange first. This is a platform called SWAP that we built, which SWAP is an acronym for sharing with a purpose. And it handles award determination. Okay, so it determines an optimal exchange, awards resources to participating nonprofits. And how does that happen? Nonprofits agree to participate, and they offer and they bid on resources. They place values, ask values or bid values in swap credit virtual currency. Then there's an allocation that happens that clears the market. And the idea there is it's also an integer optimization problem to maximize total surplus. And it does this. It tells those that have received or been awarded resources that you've been awarded the resource and to coordinate with those from whom they've received the resource. Okay. Now, on the other hand, swap and route, the optimal delivery here. That is, yes, the awarding the exchanges from original swap, but now also optimizing a delivery plan for the awarded items. And you can see where this might be more meaningful if it depends, right? I mean, if there are exchanges of resources that are not time dependent, maybe we don't need the delivery part. But when we have time sensitive contexts, a disaster or even perishable food, for examples, for application areas, right? We might want to know those delivery plans. And so then that also requires understanding, vehicles, vehicle capacities, resource space consumption, travel times, a lot more decisions as we'll get into, decision variables. And we're not only maximizing surplus, but we're balancing that with travel times and, a host of constraints to make sure there's consistent travel among the different vehicles. So far, so good. Yeah. Feel free to write if you have questions in the chat. I probably won't be able to get the chat, but maybe somebody could mention if there's something in the chat or
I will.
ask. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. If you have any questions, I think there's a hand raising feature that could probably work too. But happy to field questions as we go along. Okay, so let me briefly touch on the earlier work that's been published. This is called SWAP. Again, nonprofits here can exchange staff, skills, space, goods. Each organization offers and receives resources, potentially in a given what we call sharing episode. So these nonprofits enter into an agreement, a collaborative agreement, and they're mostly self-governed. The ideas there are that it's a legal agreement, but it's fairly we want them to exchange. We don't want it to be overly burdensome. So it's a few pages long, and they're just entering into there's a couple key tenets there. One of them is in order to receive resources, you need to offer resources. Folks often want to receive resources, but it has to go both ways over time, and I'll show how that works. And there's also some discussion there about if you borrow my van and the van, you return it with a flat tire, that would be not good. So take care of the resources that you receive as you give them back, as you would want that to happen. Those kind of things, pretty simple, straightforward things. By the way, this is deployed on the ground in Maryland. We have a couple of what we call cohorts that are exchanging resources currently. Right now, there's one. There was two, and another is on pause right now. But this is intentionally the case, as this is like a controlled pilot. This is through I should also mention a 4-year National Science Foundation award. And we are in year 4. So for the first few years, I'll give a timeline in a minute. We're really trying to get this system straight before we release it to a larger audience, and we're at that stage now. Okay, but kind of back to swap. As I mentioned, there's virtual currency balances through swap credits. They're assigned to each NPO at the beginning. And then, if an NPO and a nonprofit organization has a resource they want to offer, we start off with an offer round where they set an ask price for the resource that they're offering. So they might say, hey, I have this delivery van. I'm not using it this weekend. I might ask 25 credits for one evening of use or one day of use. Um, and then other organizations. So every organization goes through and offers resources. And then there's another round. The next round is called the bid round, where organizations can bid upon offered resources, again, in swap credits, and they need to offer at least as much as the ask value for the resource they're bidding upon. There's guardrails that I probably won't get into, but discouraging monopolies, hoarding the credits, or also I guess maybe at least as common is running out of credits. We want to be a little careful there if folks are just spending and spending and they're not offering. That's something we want to watch, but we don't want to necessarily say you've run out of credits. That's tough for you, because it's also the case. They might not want to participate. So there's ways that we've thought about this for credit redistribution, to try to balance the market sometimes, only if necessary. There's an episodic structure, as I mentioned. So there's offer round, then bid round. After all the bids are in, we can do an exchange. We use integer optimization to clear the market. I'll show more about that formulation soon. And again, cohorts are typically geographically near one another. So for example, in a city or in a region where they can deliver to one another or exchange physical resources, but it really doesn't need to be physical. It can be virtual. You could have a completely virtual cohort exchanging virtual resources, like the time and the talent of staff you might have a staff member that's really good at social media marketing, or another one that's a translator that offers some of their time. So it's really flexible in that way. But typically, I guess how we envision is maybe a little more geographic in nature. We also have our own nonprofit. It's a swap 501(c)(3). Its sole purpose that it exists is to release swap into the world. We're starting to do that right now. I'm on the board. So over here on the right is a figure that just shows how this works. I mean, there's nothing too surprising here. This tool, I won't go into the details here, the interactive co-discovery panel, but that's been something we've recently created to help generate a thick market of resources that are of interest to the players in the market. So the different nonprofits. You could imagine we go to a farmer's market, where we could buy fresh produce and vegetables, because we would go back to one if we know that when we were there before, we could get the things that we are interested in. If we go to a market and there's nothing we really are interested in, we might not want to keep going. So even though, we've discovered this, that nonprofits join and they offer resources, it's not necessarily the case that others in the cohort or in the market are interested in those resources. So we just need to be mindful to have that kind of alignment. And that's what this tool that we built, the interactive co-discovery panel, is. But that's maybe more of a software detail. Okay, so this is SWAP as it stands right now. Let me give a little bit of the trajectory of this. This is in 2022. .1 means the first half. And so we were very fortunate to have support from a number of places. Some foundations and some other generous individuals gave toward creating actually the Swap Hub platform, which is the initial software that embeds the realization in software of the offer round and the bid round and the exchange, and also the hosting of the information and these kind of things. So that's what happened in the first half of 2022. We received the support, and then the development was throughout 2022. We also received a larger NSF award. That was that 4-year award that I mentioned. We are in year 4 of that. And we beta tested the software toward the end of 2022 in Maryland. And then we started recruiting and we deployed the software. So we had a workshop in Maryland. We're finding other nonprofits that were interested. I won't spend too much time on the time. There's a lot of details here, so I'll just maybe highlight some of the red ones. We also created our own 501(c)(3) entity. That's a nonprofit in the United States. We submitted our first manuscript. You could find it online at ACM EMO that was accepted. And we had our first cohort and still operating that first cohort. And we continued along, right? So maybe I'll accelerate through some of these here. Our second cohort started, and they were very ambitious and excited, and it's just unfortunate given the political realities that the leader of that cohort, her nonprofit, she had to close her doors, and so that kind of caused some disruption. But this is the real world, right? This is, and again, this is a controlled pilot that we've been doing, so we were okay with that, and we are starting to recruit more cohorts right now. And we had another NSF, smaller NSF award. The work continues. We actually had the honor of being runner-up for the Doing Good with Good OR competition at Informs in this past fall. The code base from WPI is now at AWS, so we're really getting ready for expanding this beyond where it is right now in Maryland. So our board has grown. We have a visioning and mission visioning. So our mission statement, we're really seeing like centering on exactly our purpose there. We've approved over a $500,000 budget as the board, engaging foundations right now to really ramp this up. Okay, so that's a little bit of a timeline. It's been 3, 4 years now, but let me get to some of like what it's done so far. And you might look and say, well, this is maybe modest. It's actually intentionally modest. We're trying to get this right, and so the wheels stay on and don't fall off, early on. So it was a controlled pilot phase, and I think we really succeeded. I think I might have been more mindful being the technical lead on this than others were saying. You could just kind of do a little bit more here, but I think it's important to manage expectations for the nonprofit organizations that are in the cohort that, as they're participating, that they're able to get the things that they would, possibly desire to get, right? You can't guarantee those things, but over time, are they getting those things? Are they experiencing the software system in a good way? So I think we're a little higher now. We're at maybe 77 exchanges or so. We've had 16 episodes, I think, over the past couple years. And because that's typically quarterly that they do exchange episodes, every roughly 2 to 3 months. That's their tempo. This could be as quick as you could really do this in a day. The swap and route part, we're actually envisioning multiple times a day, possibly. There's nothing prohibiting this. It's just that the current cohort prefers to have a slower timeline. I'll get into that a little bit more. Okay. But so you can see that it's saving some resources in this controlled pilot phase. But this is really, here's what I want to underscore. This is the tip of the iceberg. Just in the USA, we have around 2 million nonprofits. If I think about just a 1% adoption rate, this is 20,000 NPOs. This is just a 1% adoption rate. We don't envision this being instantaneous. Of course, this is going to be some effort, right? And some awareness raising that this exists. But imagining those nonprofits entering into sharing cohorts and exchanging resources with one another, we just wonder what the latent collective impact could exist by expanding to many thousands of NPOs. This is our research team. Here I am at the top left. Jen Pazor is also, she's a PI at RPI. I'm a PI at WPI. Our other colleagues, Eunice and Sarah. But really what I want to highlight here, who I want to highlight is Ozge Eigel there in the middle, who is the lead PhD student on this work and really created for the swap and route part, what I'm going to talk about most of the rest of the talk today, as well as Tora Ito, who's finishing his undergraduate degree. They're both WPI students working with me on this work. It's just been fantastic to work with them. They're really, they're terrific. You'll see some of the work that they've done through this. But really, we're representing a large team. There's actually a few more individuals in the last couple of months since January that have added to the team. Okay, so everybody's got a role here. The board on the right, the blue fonts are our board members on the right. And some folks have transitioned on. Largely on the bottom rows are more students. That some are still here, some have transitioned. Weishao Huang, I want to also highlight in the center left, was the original. She's a lead former PhD student leading SWAP, the original SWAP exchange paper, and now is a postdoc also working on SWAP. Okay, and some of our nonprofit partners here, these probably won't ring a bell, but maybe they will for some of you. Either way, I mean, so they are actually real entities doing the sharing, which is it's exciting to see that they're finding a lot of value in this. And speaking of which, let me go ahead. I'm going to reshare my screen. and show a video. And I hope that this video comes through. But if it's somehow not coming through, would you let me know that? Just speak up if so. But I think I've tried this out. It looks like it'll work okay. Okay, this is just a 2 minute, less than 3 minute video.
My name is Jessamine Duval. I'm the Executive Director of Columbia Housing Center in Columbia, Maryland. I've been involved in SWAP for, I guess, a little over a year, and so far it's been a great experience. As a small nonprofit, I only have a staff of 3. I kind of have to be a jack of all trades, and there are some things I'm naturally good at and other things that I'm not. And SWAP has been really helpful in giving me some additional resources and help that I couldn't get.
Some of the stories that we hear are things we would never expect. And so I'm going to show you something very simple and tell a powerful story. We actually got this board from the SWAP. We use it for every one of our volunteer projects. We use this when we introduce volunteers to who we are. And it's a really simple thing. It's a dry erase board, but it was sitting in a warehouse of one of the SWAP partners, not being used. And here it's in our warehouse every single day. We're using it 4 or 5 times a month. So something as simple as that and just making an exchange of a resource really does help improve everybody's resilience.
So we're regularly a partner of the tool bank. Every volunteer event we do, we use stuff with them, and with the swap stuff, we're able to kind of deepen that relationship and partnership. Wow, great! Yeah, can't wait to put them in inventory. Yeah, man, the ones in Milwaukee, keep thinking out. Dollies are just this week's example, finding ways instead of them going to a dumpster or just kind of sitting in a nursery, just getting stale, to actually get stuff out there.
We have a very complicated grant report. One of the organizations in our cohort was able to create like a custom Excel spreadsheet for me that basically allowed me to enter the data and then spit out the results, which was huge because I would typically spend hours poring over all these numbers and trying to do math. So it really saved me a lot of time and energy and frustration.
We're about to have our 3rd swap, so we're about 6 months old. So I imagine that will grow as the cohort grows, but also as the relationships.
If I have a resource that I can share with somebody else, and then in return, I'm getting something back, it doesn't feel like work or effort if it's as simple as, oh yeah, we have access to this and I'm happy to share it with you.
I think SWAP is such a great idea. It's very innovative. And I think organizations all over the country could utilize something like SWAP to leverage their smaller budgets to receive resources. Then they can also actually give resources, which is really the mission of nonprofits.
Well, great. Thanks for hearing that. Hopefully that came through okay. And that was really just detailing some of the experiences of those members of cohorts that have been using the original swap. That's not swap and route that I'm going to speak the rest of today on. But that again is the value that was through the original swap. So let me go ahead back to here. I think that you can see this again. I just wanted to point out Darren, the PhD student who did the filming there, did I think a great job with that. So if we're okay to go on, I don't know if there's any questions. I can pause for a minute if there are.
So are there any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yeah, Justin?
So what do you see as the main bottleneck for scaling it up? Is it to get companies interested or?
Yeah, that's a great question, Justin. It is not. It doesn't seem to be interest. Of course, there's some that are not interested or, they're too busy or couldn't bother with it. We found quite a bit of interest. It's really, it had been making sure that the software, not that it was buggy, but just kind of working out any kinks and things early on. But anymore, those have really been ironed out. And so it's about scaling. It's a platform, right? So it's about scaling in a way that is responsive to the needs that we could, support those needs. When I say we, I mean really the SWAP Research Collective, which is largely the folks on the left part, not the board. But as the board continues, that's why we're raising support, is to provide salaries for those those interested in helping to facilitate new cohorts. Because here's what happens, right? A nonprofit signs up and says, I'm interested. What do I do? And, we might add them with we might say, hold on for a little while until others in their area are also joining. So they have some folks to exchange with. Nonprofits sometimes, the small to medium scale that we're looking at, that they might have a few staff, maybe up to 10 to 15, maybe 20. But generally under 10 staff. So they have fluctuations in what they can, reasonably participate with. So it's not always the case that, if you have a cohort of, let's say, 10 nonprofits, that all 10 would show up every time there's an exchange. Some might not be able to. They're in a busy season. And so we need to have some amount of, minimal nonprofits to do exchanges to be in a cohort. We think that sweet spot is roughly 8 to 12, but there's nothing prohibiting higher amounts, including computational complexity for the original swap anyway. But I would say that it's really, the scaling of this depends on our ability to support them initially. We are transitioning to a decentralized model, which we think is just the way of the future for swap, is that it's just not really possible that we could do too much facilitation. So a lot of, onboarding that's thoughtfully done to bring people on board, and really like pioneering, where there be for a cohort, there'd be maybe a president or somebody that's kind of facilitating, and that could rotate, or that could be a permanent thing for a cohort. But again, we've seen no shortage of interest in using this. It's just more about, we're actually saying, okay, hold on, for folks that are interested, and we just want to get that right. And partly, I'm a technical person too, so we need that expertise, and that's what the board is raising support for. And also, we've got great members on the board now that can help, with it. We're looking for an HR person for the board and things. So I hope that helped, Justin.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Other questions? So I have a question also, Andrew. So it's if I understood it correctly, then it's not only about tools, but also about services that you can offer or ask.
That's right. It's only limited. We've even seen subscriptions, access to a subscription plan for some online service. They're not using it, so the one organization will forgo that subscription for a time so somebody else can use it. These kind of, so it's as flexible as their imagination in some sense. If there's some value, they can put a value on it. But typically it's physical resources, and sometimes it is, yes, time and talents of staff.
Yeah, because it might differ. So if you have tools, then maybe it should be close by. But if the services that could maybe done online, so then you can also make it in a wider neighborhoods, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so
Maybe
then
one
that's,
question, sorry.
oh, sure.
Yeah.
One question, Andrew. So
Yeah.
one question, do you see a big difference in organizations that participate? So what I mean is, do you have like suppliers that provide a little bit of their services, of their products, and some organizations that receive a lot? Or is it kind of balanced between the organizations that are involved in such a cohort?
That's a great question. We have seen, of course, there's some variation. Some are maybe, sometimes the divide is around the technical literacy of the staff that are using. So sometimes they may not be so comfortable using the software, even though we've designed it to be fairly frictionless. Most say it's very straightforward to use. But even so, they might only be so comfortable with it. So they're just kind of listing the same thing each time. Again, I have a meeting room available again, and that's fine if that's what they have available. But others are more strategic, and they know they've been learning the feel of the market and what they can offer to be able to get something of value in return. And that's important, right? We've designed this so that at first it's possible to acquire things just by using credit, but credit runs out, right? So they need to also offer resources. And when those are exchanged, if they offer a valuable resource and not an exorbitant price for the resource, it might get bid upon and exchanged, and then they'll have some credit that they can use to acquire things they need.
Right.
But yeah, so it does depend, and we don't see really high volumes from one to the other thing. Let's remember too, like the coordination is there is some cost there, right? If I exchange, let's say, five things, I need to coordinate with five different players possibly about pickup, and so there's a little bit of cap there that we didn't anticipate that at first, but we saw that. We do think that there's ways to streamline, including through swap and route to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, because it might be for interest for organizations that want to get something that they don't have to enter your cohort, and then you may be flushed with organizations like that. But yeah, great to hear. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, and I'm going to show a little bit in the math. I know I spent a lot of text and video and things so far that actually facilitates this.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And that's what we're moving toward is the swap and route portion, which is now just periodic resource exchange to now coordination. So the delivery plans and things. And especially we see that's useful for time sensitive needs. Yeah. So let's see. So swap is kind of based on this top right figure here, this calendar. I mean, I shouldn't say it's based on this, right? But to date, the cohorts that have been exchanging resources prefer something like this, where for, maybe there's a period in this yellow at the top of February there where they're identifying their needs. They kind of coordinate somewhat, and we had been using, before this panel software that we've made, we had been using just really a shared Google Sheet, and they type in there, hey, I'm looking for this upcoming exchange. I need, I have an annual fundraising event, and I need, a microphone and some speakers and a table and chairs. And somebody else says, oh, I have my reporting period is coming up, and I need somebody to help with that. Yeah. And then this next row, the 9th to the 13th, might be where they're offering for a week, offering resources with ask values. And the following week, they both, most of the week there is where they're bidding on others' resources. That's what we need. That's also called what we need in the software. And then that last day, it could really be at the end of the day, we clear the market with integer optimization, which is really, it doesn't take very long. It's, maybe under a minute, and we clear the market. And then the green line there with just, it looks like a week, it's actually like dotted on the bottom because they might take weeks to do the exchange, which might be surprising, but maybe not, right? They might be looking for some resources in the not too distant future that they need. They know that they need it, but they don't need it, on day one. So they might facilitate the exchange in a week or two. Because even though we think that, oh, swap should be pretty, centric, it's really not. I mean, they have their own operation is what's centric. And then this is like an add-on that's helpful for them. Of course, we want it to be something that's facilitating as much as they need, but then no more than that, right? I mean, it's also the case if they meet folks and they do exchanges with one another and they just call each other up next time, that's great. Like they don't need to be in swap to do this long term. That's not our goal. We just want to help collaboration facilitate the resource exchange. Of course, it's nice if they use swap, but okay, so swap and route is, again, the sharing plus collaborative routing, and it is not on this calendar of, weeks and weeks. It can be in a day, even multiple times a day, okay? So let me move into this direction here, where, there's probably a regional trust-based network that is sharing now physical resources, okay? And it's true, so each participant in swap, each player is both a buyer and a seller, and now in swap and route, they might also have one or more vehicles to donate. I don't mean swap, I don't mean exchange, but to help with the delivery of the resources. Okay, so they might also be a depot because they have one or more vehicles and a customer, right? So that in vehicle routing literature, we see that this is a common, feature of the nodes in the vehicle routing problem, right? It's like a depot node or a customer node, each, maybe both. Okay. And multiple visits to a node can occur. And basically we're doing both. Exchange plus routing are being solved. And depending on how we handle this, they are linked. We can't decouple. That's what we're seeing in the formulation we present. So let me just show this graphic here. So this blue part here first is exchange. Okay, so there's some exchange. So one is getting resources from 2 and 3. And then what might happen? So I'll let you just watch the video here. So on the left, we have inefficient exchange, where there's 3 exchanges, but there's 5 trips. On the right, we've got 3 exchanges that really just need 3 legs instead of 5 on the left. And so it's no big surprise here that, right, if we coordinate, we can deliver goods with less total trips. Okay. All right. So to date, we haven't seen any math. Now here's a slide full of some math, which probably folks are waiting for. So at least some of you. So let me go ahead and talk through some of this. We've got a set of nonprofits, N, that we index with I and J, a set of total resources, R, and a set of vehicles. These are like the universe of vehicles, the universe of resources, R and V. I've got subsets per nonprofit I of resources, RI. So those are the resources that nonprofit I is offering in this round of exchange. And then VI is a set of vehicles that nonprofit I makes available for this exchange. They might have just a passenger car or a delivery van that they could allow for this time-sensitive exchange. So they make them available or not. The vehicles could be that could be an empty set. The parameters here, CI, is just the swap credit balance for nonprofit I. And then these are typical. The first 3 here are just parameters from the swap exchange model, which I will show on the next slide as part of the larger. So for any resource that nonprofit I, any resource K that nonprofit I makes available, they have an ask price, RIK. And then bid price. So if I'm nonprofit J and I'm bidding on I's resource K, then I have a bid price there. So that's what B is. Now mu KV is the capacity fraction occupied by resource K in vehicle V. Okay. Now, how would we do that? That's in a time-sensitive context. We see ways. We could do estimates. We could do bounds. If it's a larger object, we might say that might take most of the capacity if we're conservative. The goal here is just we don't want to be unrealistic, so we want to be conservative with those. We might not have the exact fractions. AI could also help, frankly, in some of these. So we see that, and again, this is ongoing work, so it's not yet deployed. This part, the delivery part, the route part. Okay, so we are working on a few of these details. The travel time, TIJ. And now I've got over on the other column, I've got variables xi, j, k. Those are the original swap exchange variables, just saying j receives i's resource k if x is 1, 0 otherwise. YIJV are standard vehicle routing variables. Vehicle V traverses from I to J if it's 1, 0 otherwise. Now UIV just says vehicle V visits node I. It's just a visitation. That's a kind of an auxiliary variable that we use. ZIKV is a loading variable. So if resource K is loaded onto V at node I, so V is kind of picking up, right? And then row IJKV, and there's a lot of notation. Row is, now if J receives I's resource K with vehicle V, then row is 1, not 0 otherwise. Delta is a net capacity change of vehicle V at node I. So V is going around, but stops at I. I'm noting the change, and that capacity change is just, it should really say net load change. That's actually probably a better word. The change in their load, right? If they drop something off and they pick something up, what percent of their 100% of capacity has changed? That's what delta is. QIV is the absolute fraction, right? It is the proportion or fraction of their vehicle's capacity used at node I. So delta is a function of Q. And delta, again, is an auxiliary variable. We use it for, I'll share in a minute why. And then S are your standard start times at nodes, or arrival times at node I of vehicle V. Okay, so here is the initial formulation for, I'm going to show swap and then swap and route, so it's kind of embedded in. So the objective function for swap is to maximize the surplus, which is the bid less ask swap credit across all allocated exchanges. Yeah, so it's just our bid minus our ask, where the x's are 1, which again means J receives I's resource K. Where that's 1, of course, we get the differential. We want to maximize that total differential. The exchange constraints simply say a resource can be exchanged at most once. It's kind of, you have to tell the model that. And then this interesting constraint that it seems kind of innocuous at first. It's just saying non-negative balances, really. CJ is the balance. So for nonprofit J, if CJ is, let's say, 0, I don't have any credit, then the only way that I could acquire something is if I also concurrently receive credit in the current episode. Like I cannot spend any more credit than I have, but that have can be what's in my wallet, CJ, or what I receive right now, which is actually lovely, right? Because I could have low amount of credits or no credits, but I need something right now as a nonprofit. And what I can do is I can make available resources that I know are attractive, that people would probably want these, and list them at a competitive, not exorbitant price. Now, if those are exchanged, it is conditional on if they're exchanged. But again, there's a high likelihood then if I'm making these resources available. So I sacrifice something that I might not need as much right now in order to acquire things that I could get, like that I would like. Okay, but and there's no limit on that, by the way, right? I mean, CJs are typically initiated at, let's say, 100 credits to start a cohort. But, the left-hand side and the right-hand side, the summations could be in the thousands, really, or whatever. I mean, we've not seen that, right? That would be a lot. But, I mean, there's nothing prohibiting that large amount of inflow and outflow. Just as non-negativity for balances. Okay, moving along. So I've got that original, so that was the original swap model, other than, binary variables. Now with swap and route, we're both maximizing total surplus swap credit like before, and secondarily, I mean, when I say secondarily, maybe I'll say that with an asterisk, but secondarily is kind of how we initially envisioned it. So as a secondary optimization problem to minimize the total travel time, but we're solving them jointly. But that depends, right? It's also true we might care somewhat more about the travel time. So how do we select alpha matters? Okay, but alpha you can imagine is a coefficient between 0 and 1, user specified. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Now we've got constraints that just say node visitation requires arrival and departure. Those aren't anything really too exciting there, just for connectivity for the routing. Now this says that any exchange resources loaded onto exactly one vehicle. So if I'm summing over, my nonprofits that might get I's resource K, I better load it, right? If this is a 1, it needs to get loaded. Now loading and routing. So if I visit, if I'm loading at node I, resource K, then I need to visit it. When I say I should say vehicle V needs to visit it. And then destination visitation must happen for carried exchanges. So if you look closely at so XIJK is again, J receives I's resource K, and now I's resource K is loaded onto V. If both of those are true, then V better be visiting node J, the destination node. Okay. Now scheduling constraints, these are going to look fairly similar. You've got your subtour elimination constraints around and about, and also at the depot. And we've got resource loading happens prior to unloading. Okay. And that's just important that we want to make sure that the visitation node J to unload happens after I. And then finally, we have our capacity constraints. So here we're computing our capacity QI. This is our net change in capacity. And then maintaining the capacity throughout the route is important. So we just want to honor that, we're within our bounds. Where Yij is 1, I need to be mindful, that Yij V rather is 1. Vehicle V is going from I to J. I need to make sure that I'm within my capacity bounds. Yeah, I see a hand.
Hi, sorry, I might have missed something. So, how do these organizations accumulate credit and how do they use that? And specifically, those who are coming on board as new participants, how can they participate the first few times?
Yeah, great. Great question. So, well, you didn't miss anything because I didn't quite explain that part. But how they're onboarded to date has been that they all join simultaneously, and they're all awarded 100 credits. That it could be a different constant number, but they're all awarded the same level of credits. And it's important to note that the organizations are of similar size. So this is not a very large nonprofit or NGO with, let's say hundreds or thousands of staff with, one with 5 staff. That's not what's happening. Rather, these are small to medium NPOs with, again, maybe up to 20 or so staff, but largely under 10. So, and they have budgets of $1 to $5 million roughly a year or so. So they're relatively small nonprofits that could really benefit from sharing resources. But yeah, so they're starting together. Now, have we ever added nonprofits to an existing cohort? We have done that. That's a little less frequent, but we've done that a handful of times as well. And they would start off with 100. So then the amount, it's a closed system, so the total amount of credit in the system would increase by 100 every time that happens. And hopefully that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, do they earn more credits as they participate?
Yes. They earn credits by sharing resources, making resources available at attractive ask prices, and then having those resources because others want them. They bid on them, and then the original offering nonprofit receives the credit.
Okay.
And they receive the actual bid amount, actually, not the ask amount.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the complexity of this problem. So there's a few things that are driving the complexity, as you can imagine. The cohort size, that's quadratic, because we lots of IJ pairs. Market thickness, the total number of resources, and then the fleet size also matters. So this could, as the number of resources increases, number of resources is larger than the cohort size typically, right? If each organization is offering one resource, then we're at that level. So it's probably a little larger, and vehicles can vary as well. So we're looking at probably quartic complexity in the size of, on the order of this size of the cohort. If it's a very thick market, maybe even more. So, I mean, that also suggests that we're not at the cutting edge of vehicle routing problems where we're solving, hundreds of nodes of problems, but that's actually okay because the sizes that we are solving are probably conducive to organizations that can communicate with one another in a crisis situation. There might be, 10 to 15. We've done up to 18 or 20 organizations. They're in some geographical regions, so you're not going to have hundreds and hundreds of organizations in this short nearby distance. So we're feeling pretty good about that. The market thickness, this is our experiment, so we're varying these across 2 levels. I'll show how I got those averages in a minute. But L1 just means that a thinner market. L2 is a thicker market of offers per organization. And same number of vehicles, each organization has slightly more likely to have a vehicle than not. And so I'll just put a question out there. Again, this is work in progress. So this is kind of where we are right now. We're nearing submission of this manuscript. We're not quite there yet. So how can 18 organizations coordinate to share 50-some resources with 15 vehicles in a matter of hours? And when I say hours, I mean that we're limiting runtime to 30 minutes, and the delivery routes that are happening are under the remaining time of, let's say, 90 minutes or so. Okay, so maybe this is too many technical details here, but suffice it, this is how we got the L1 and L2 levels. We've got the probabilities of each of these number of resources being offered. Then bids, similarly, we've got those likelihoods. So these are of the order of exchanges of the type that we've seen in the cohorts we have. Okay, so there's nothing that's, out of place here, except we don't have vehicles exchanging, like, we're not doing this. So we invented that part where we're simulating vehicles of different types here. I think there's, from small compact cars to up to large delivery vans and things like this are. So there's different vehicle types here. Those are just encoded numerically, but those are 6 different types. And then the number of vehicles, this is how we got to 0.6 per nonprofit, the expectation there. Okay, so distributions there. And we found that some enhancement strategies help. So some dominance relations we found through an exchange activated visit, which just means that a vehicle should only visit a node if there's at least one loading or unloading action scheduled, right? If there's no action happening in terms of loading or unloading, then why are we visiting that node? Why is vehicle V visiting that node? So this eliminates redundant stops that don't add value, just travel time. And then route activated exchange too. So an exchange could only occur if there's a route to the receiving organization. So this is kind of, if you think about it, it's okay that makes a lot of sense. And so what these do are they just remove solutions that are guaranteed to not be optimal. So that's one set of enhancements. Another one is a bit isolated cycle elimination. So if there is a subset S where there's no bid activity happening, then why would there be any transportation happening? So we're just careful there to eliminate such cycles. And then we do dynamic subtour elimination. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but this basically cuts off subtours by forcing at least one arc to leave a node set S, a subset S, that doesn't include the depot node. Okay. And we can talk more about these details maybe offline. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but what we do here is we construct an undirected graph with weights as such from the fractional LP relaxation solution. We construct a Gomery-Hu tree to generate subtour sets, and we rank those candidates and inject a limited number of cuts more at the root node, and then later on periodic. We're still testing, to what extent we should be injecting such cuts. Okay. And then let me go through the scalability here. This is actually performance. So first, I know it's like there's a lot of numbers here. Let me just walk through this a little bit. This is 10 NPOs, 12, 15, and 18. I'm almost done too with my talk here too. So I'll be wrapping up in a minute or two if there's questions. So L1, L2 is a market thickness. So you can see that as we're scaling, we're getting up to 18 organizations, definitely like almost twice as much as 10, right? And I've got the market thicknesses in each column, L1, L2. L1 is lighter, L2 is thicker. So as you can see, at the left side, we're solving lots of instances to optimality here and not too much runtime. Oh, and then one more tier, sorry. Base formulation is just without any of those enhancements that I shared on the last couple slides. And then the bottom is with the enhancements. And they do seem to be helping overall. At 15 NPOs, we're solving less with the base node, but still, not 10 in other words, but 9 solve the optimality here. The runtime's a little larger, 340 seconds, 249 here. I think we're using Groby 12 or something with this as well. Now 18, we're kind of getting at our limits there. What can we solve to optimality here? But we still have strong feasible solutions. Okay, so in a nutshell, we're finding that we are able to solve the optimality instances 12 to 15, let's say. Most of those are solved, 12 to 15 NPOs with reasonable thicknesses in the market, reasonable amount of cars. Now, I will show like the enhancements just on the x-axis. We've got runtime, objective function value on the y-axis. And, without those enhancements, this is an instance with 18 organizations, 29 resources, 13 vehicles. You can see that they converge to optimality a lot faster here. The primal and the dual gap went to 0 in roughly 750 seconds. The other one didn't converge. Okay, so just as takeaways, swap and route, the route part integrates this auction-based resource exchange with horizontal vehicle routing, enables rapid coordinated response. Enhancement strategies appear to be improving scalability. We still have a bit of work to do there. And really, we think that this is going to help any community that trusts one another to share resources with one another and coordinate logistics. So that concludes my talk. Thank you all for your attention.